Hello, I'm Sky Matsuhashi, founder of SmartPokerStudy.com, the place for poker players who are always striving to be better today than they were yesterday. Poker people, especially you MTTers out there, make sure you download episode 47, where I helped you plug the leak of nitty late-stage MTT play and showed you how to keep up the aggression on your way to the final table. Hey poker people, it's Q&A Friday. I know you've been looking forward to this all week just as I have, so let's get to it because there is a lot to discuss. First up, my study partner and friend to the show, Dennis Peterson, created an awesome video about a great poker software called Hold'em Resources Calculator. This is a killer program for analyzing push-fold play and calling shoves in tournaments. This would have been perfect to mention in podcast number 47 when I discussed playing the late stages of MTTs, but it's never too late to give you great info here at the Smart Poker Study podcast. In the video, Dennis shows you how to use Hold'em Resources Calculator to calculate what ranges you can profitably shove from every position at the table. It even shows you how profitable each hand is within that shoving range. The program considers the stack sizes of every opponent at the table and the number of players left to act. Once you calculate the profitable shoving range, you can go down the positions and see what can profitably call your shove with by position. This is great for late stage MTT and sit and go study as well. You can manually enter in the information, or you can import your own hand histories from your poker tracking software. This is a killer program, so please go to the show notes for this page at smartpokerstudy.com/pod48 to watch and learn from Dennis's video on how to use Hold'em Resources Calculator. And this is a great companion piece to episode 47. Thanks for the video, Dennis. Alrighty then, we've got 3 questions today, which we will hit right now. So instead of a funny question, I'm going to do something a little different in honor of a very special holiday today. It's Tolkien Reading Day. Yep, J.R.R. Tolkien has his own day to honor his literary accomplishments. And this is actually from The Fellowship of the Ring. At the end of the movie, we see the Balrog fall down that pit, and he whips Gandalf in behind him. And so this is the passage right here, pretty exciting passage from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring. "You cannot pass," he said. The orcs stood still, and a dead silence fell. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Udun, go back to the shadow. You cannot pass." The Balrog made no answer. The fire in it seemed to die, but the darkness grew. It stepped forward slowly onto the bridge, and suddenly it drew itself up to a great height, and its wings were spread from wall to wall, but still Gandalf could be seen, glimmering in the gloom. He seemed small and altogether alone, gray and bent like a wizened tree before the onset of a storm. From out of the shadow a red sword leaped, flaming. Glamdring glittered, white in answer. There was a ringing clash and a stab of white fire. The Balrog fell back, and its sword flew up in molten fragments. The wizard swayed on the bridge, stepped back a pace, and then again stood still. "You cannot pass," he said. With a bound, the Balrog leaped full upon the bridge. Its whip whirled and hissed. "He cannot stand alone," cried Aragorn suddenly, and ran back along the bridge. "Elendil," he shouted, "I am with you, Gandalf." "Gondor," cried Boromir, and leaped after him. At that moment, Gandalf lifted his staff, and crying aloud, he smote the bridge before him. The staff broke asunder and fell from his hand. A blinding sheet of white flame sprang up. The bridge cracked. Right at the Balrog's feet it broke, and the stone upon which it stood crashed into the gulf, while the rest remained poised, quivering like a tongue of rock thrust out into emptiness. With a terrible cry, the Balrog fell forward, and its shadow plunged down and vanished. But even as it fell, it swung its whip, and the thongs lashed and curled about the wizard's knees, dragging him to the brink. He staggered and fell, grasped vainly at the stone, and slid into the abyss. "Fly, you fools!" he cried, and was gone. Wow, I remember seeing that. I went to the movie theater, of course, to watch the second part of that movie, and or the second part of that series, and then when Gandalf fell in and then chased that Balrog through miles, just falling through miles into the Earth's core, that was an amazing scene. So I wanted to read that little piece of Tolkien history right there. If you haven't already, make sure you go out and pick up your own copies of J.R.R. Tolkien's books, The Lord of the Rings. If you love the movies, you'll love the books, guaranteed. Alrighty, so on to the first question. This one comes from Greg. Greg says, worst traffic I've ever seen in SoCal this morning. Thank goodness you met your weekly podcast commitment, smiley face. Made the drive a bit more productive. I had a couple follow-on questions that I wondered if you could answer. You mentioned developing a personal 3-bet range. Can you share that? And question 2 is, you mentioned belonging to study groups. Are those virtual or in person? How do they work? Are they facilitated? Might be a good topic for a future podcast. How to organize and maintain a successful study group based on your personal experience. Keep up the good work, Greg. All right, thanks for the questions, Gregs. And, podcasts have helped me through many commutes as well. So question number 1. I had 3-bet ranges that I used for a long time. Then I made some adjustments to them after I read Ed Miller's book called The Course, which I discussed in a few podcast episodes in the past. He gave me the idea of adding more 3-bet bluffing hands to my range to make me more difficult to pin down. For example, my cutoff 3-betting range versus a tight opener is 10s or better, ace-jack suited or better, ace-queen offsuit or better, and ace-4 suited and ace-5 suited. This is 74 combos, and combos are just different hands. Like, for example, ace-4 suited, there's 4 combos of those, ace-4 of spades, of clubs, hearts, and diamonds. So that's what combos are. And so there's 74 combos, and 8 of which are what I'd consider to be semi-bluffs, the ace-4 and the ace-5 suited. I call them semi-bluffs because they aren't full valueless bluffs like 9-deuce off or 10-5 off. There is some value to these suited aces. And my button 3-bet range versus a loose opener, on the other hand, is 8s or better, ace-10 or better, king-jack suited or better, ace-4 suited, ace-5 suited, 8-6 suited, and 9-7 suited. This is 130 combos of hands total, 20 of which I would consider to be semi-bluffs, which is about 15%, so my whole range right there is 85% value and 15% semi-bluffs. So the idea behind creating your 3-bet range is to build in lots of value with some bluffs thrown in. The bluff hands you throw in should be suited and connected, or even suited gappers, because you want some good equity when you get called. Aces are great as well, because if you have an ace, it's less likely your opponent has one, so he's more likely to fold to your 3-bet. I mentioned a few weaker or semi-bluff hands like ace-5 suited and 8-6 suited. These are interchangeable with other hands that are similar. From time to time, I'll change my semi-bluff hands to other suited connectors or suited gappers or suited aces. It doesn't matter which ones you throw in, as long as you include some of them. These less powerful hands will help to keep your 3-bet percentage higher than a strictly value-oriented 3-bet range, and it'll keep your opponents guessing as well. They don't know if you might show up with ace-king here, or ace-7, or ace-5, or pocket 8s, or pocket jacks. They don't know, and it makes it easier for you to play against them when they can't range you so well. And also, those two ranges that I just mentioned, the cutoff and the button ranges, I adjust those quite often on the fly if the original razor is super loose or super tight, And also, my small blind 3-bet range is fluid and is based on what position made the open and what player type he is. Of course, it's comprised mostly of value hands like jacks or better and ace-king or ace-queen suited, and same as in the big blind. And my early position 3-bet range is super tight, so if an under-the-gun opened, especially if he's a nitty player, I'm probably just going to 3-bet with kings or better and ace-king suited, and maybe just call with ace-king off, depending on the rest of the players at the table. And I'll also throw in a suited ace for balance, to throw in one bluffy kind of hand. I just want to make sure that at no time or position am I raising strictly for value, as that makes me too easy to read. And one general idea about 3-betting is don't do it with hands that you'd rather see a flop with, because you'll have to fold to 4-bets quite often, when your opponent does make a 4-bet. It's great to see flops with the Jack-10 suited, the 8-9 suited, 7-6 suited, and small and medium pocket pairs. You don't want to 3-bet those and just fold them. You'd rather see a flop with those hands. So if you want to see a flop with these quote-unquote weaker hands, then consider just calling instead of 3-betting and then folding to the 4-bet. And then so for question 2 regarding study groups, I'm in 2 study groups right now, both with just me and one other player. We do our meetings via Skype, and Skype has an awesome screen sharing feature. And we've done hand history reviews and sweat sessions and just discussing different study topics with the Skype there. We determine what we want to study on our own ahead of time. We study it, then we meet, and we discuss what we've learned together. In one study group, we started with Alex Fitzgerald's webinar, Dissecting the Donk Bet. And now we've moved to Andrew Brokas's hand-reading videos from Tournament Poker Edge. In the other group, we're studying Split Suit's hand-reading lab. So right now it's a lot of hand-reading that I'm studying. And because it's just the 2 of us in each group, we don't have any facilitator. We just bounce ideas back and forth, But I would imagine that if we ever get a 3rd or 4th person in, we'll probably give someone the task of being the quote-unquote leader and keeping us on track. Both groups are successful so far in that I get along with my study partners, and we've been very open and honest in our communications. I imagine if one of us was a prick or super negative or whiny or complainy or something, then the other one would just end the study group and not participate anymore. So thank you very much for those questions, Greg. So question number 2 here. Alrighty. Let's see. This one comes from Ingomar, who's a past submitter to the Q&A podcast. When you decided to play poker, what was your thought process? I.e., I have X amount of money, X amount of time, I'll start at X level. If I'm not doing well, I'll make X adjustment. Also, I find that sessions get easier when I simply have a lot of data on who I am playing against. I don't believe you made an episode on how to play tables where you have very low hand history on most of the players. I sometimes make poor decisions out of emotional disbelief on people I have no reads on. Maybe you can get into that. Thanks, Ingomar. Okay, well, thank you very much for the question and the show idea, Ingomar. Regarding the first part, when I first got into poker, it was just for fun with family home games. It progressed to live cash games and live MTTs where my goal was just to win the monies. Eventually, I took the plunge into the online world. At first, I was hesitant because I figured it was really easy for players to collude and take a newbie's chips, some unsuspecting fool's chips like I was at the time. But I did some research and I found sites like 2plus2 and others where people were all about playing online and they weren't concerned with cheaters and collusion. I lost the first 2 big deposits that I made rather quickly because I didn't understand bankroll management, nor did I understand online variance, Plus, I wasn't good yet, I'll admit that. I was just not any good at all. And I was just your typical fish, like splashing around in games that were too big, playing $1, $2 when I only had like $500 bankroll, stuff like that. So, but I eventually wised up after doing some research online, and I tried building my bankroll and improve my skills by dropping down to lower stakes cash, MTTs, and sit and goes. And now I'm working my way up, or back up currently, playing all 3 of those types, but I focus on mainly cash right now, with the occasional MTT and SNG thrown in. And I still play poker because I enjoy the game, but I also play to make money, to improve my game, to improve myself, and to learn more, to teach others what I've learned. I play mostly online, but occasionally I'll play in a home game and hit the local card room, especially for live MTTs. As far as having a future podcast about playing versus randoms, I love that idea, and I will do a full podcast on it. In last week's Q&A, episode 46, I talked about playing versus randoms, so please go back and listen to that. I think you sent me this email before I made that podcast, but I will do a full podcast on playing versus randoms in the future for show. Alrighty, thank you for the email, Ingomar. Would you like your chance to win a free $10 every Tuesday to jumpstart your online poker career? Then make sure you sign up for an America's Card Room account through me for 27% rakeback and get your 100% first deposit bonus of up to $1,000 as well. Once you click through one of the banners in the show notes, email me your newly minted ACR screen name and you'll be entered into a weekly drawing for a free $10 player-to-player transfer. I'll announce the winner in the podcast every Tuesday and transfer the $10 from my own ACR account to the winner's account. And soon we'll be holding weekly free rolls exclusive to my listeners. So get in on the action and open your own America's Card Room account today by clicking the banner at the top of this episode's show notes or go to www.smartpokerstudy.com/ACR for more details and your chance to win $10 weekly. All right, so to go along with that, on Sunday, April 3rd at 1 p.m., I'll be playing in the Big Ten $2,000 guaranteed $11 buy-in tournament on America's Card Room, and I'm inviting all of you to join me. If you're already an ACR player, great. If not, you can go to smartpokerstudy.com/ACR and click on the banner to download the software. Once you create your account, go to the Facebook discussion page at smartpokerstudy.com/discuss to let me know you'll be playing in the tourney. I'll have a post pinned at the top of the timeline featuring this tournament. Just add your screen name within the comments in the pinned post. During the tourney, we can all chat with the Facebook group page as we play, or within the Facebook group page as we play. And as a special bonus, the person who lasts the longest will win $10 from me. So that's a free roll, last longer bet for everybody who participates. And whoever knocks me out will get $10 as a bounty prize. I guess you've got to get lucky enough to be at my table in the first place. And then you have to be lucky enough to cooler my pocket aces with a rivered 4-card flush or something like that. Because that's the only way I ever lose tournaments, to river suckouts, you know. The last longer isn't limited to new people to America's Card Room. It's open to all listeners of the podcast. So head over to the Facebook group at smartpokerstudy.com/discuss, ask to join if you're not already a member, and leave your screen name in the comments of the pinned post at the top. Let's do this, people. I hope to see a Big Ten final table full of podcast listeners, and my ACR screen name is Frisky Misky, so come get me. Okay, the final question today comes from Robert Dewberry. He says, "Hey, Sky, I did think of one concept that I would love to learn more about, and that's off-the-table practice. In something like tennis, this is really easy. If you want to work on your backhand, you can go out on the court and hit a few thousand backhands, and eventually you'll improve. But with poker being such a dynamic game, off-the-table practice becomes much more difficult. I would love to hear more about the ways you and your listeners have come up with to practice the concepts we are learning from books, videos, and podcasts. One common recommendation I hear for practicing key concepts off the table is the use of play money or extreme micro limits online. I am a live cash player only, so I don't have much experience with online play. The problem I have found with this is that the game just moves entirely too fast to practice deliberately and effectively. As an example, I had watched a series by Andrew Brokus on hand reading and wanted to replicate his process of slowly going street by street, writing down each possible holding. Monster hand, marginal hand, draw/air hand, then whittling them down into a range of probable hands by the river. But the fast pace of online play makes this all but impossible. Eventually, I did solve this with a subscription to Poker Snowy, which allows me to play hands at any pace I like. Some of the concepts that I have struggled with practicing off-table include bet sizing, poker math, especially pot odds versus hand equity, hand reading, tell recognition, c-bet timing, and I'm sure there are many others that are not coming to mind at the moment. On a side note, I just started reading The One Thing, and I'm really enjoying it. I can see why it's had such an impact on you. I just finished a book that I'd like to recommend to you called Deep Work by Cal Newport, which tackles some of the issues as it focuses on the importance of focus and deep thought in one's work. Love the show. Please keep up the great work. All the best, Robert Dewberry. Alrighty, well, thank you very much for the question, Robert. And I'll definitely address each of these ideas in future podcasts. You know, I have talked about some in prior ones, but I'll do specific podcasts on each of these topics as well. And they're all great topics. I've written them down, so I'm going to add them to my content schedule. And I also watched that same series by Andrew Brokus, and that's the one I'm currently studying in one of my study groups. And I'm glad you're enjoying The One Thing, and I'll check out that book, Deep Work, as well. So thanks for that recommendation. And regarding off-the-felt practice, hand history reviews, kind of like what you're doing with Poker Snowy, and study sessions are great for this. I always do them with an emphasis on just one strategy at a time. So because your goal is to get better at hand reading, just focus on that for each hand you review. Don't spend extra time thinking about things that aren't related to hand reading, like break-even poker math, bet sizing, pot odds, c-bet timing, all these different things that you had already mentioned. When you're doing hand history reviews, just focus on one thing at a time. Filter for hands that went to showdown, and on a piece of paper, start with an assumed pre-flop range for each player, then narrow it down as you progress through the streets. You control the pace of your review, so just take your time, Doing hand history reviews with a study partner is even better because you'll each think of things the other doesn't think of, thereby helping each other improve even faster. And it sounds to me like well, you had said that you don't have much experience with online poker, so you probably don't have any poker tracking software like Poker Tracker 4. Well, you can support my show and get a free 30-day trial of Poker Tracker by going to smartpokerstudy.com/PT-4. So at a minimum, get the free trial to begin recording your hands for later review. Make sure to get into programs like Equilab to learn visualizing hand ranges, and eventually I'd like to see you get Flopzilla for some very detailed pre-flop and then post-flop study as well. If you're just starting online play, then begin with Poker Tracker 4 and Equilab. Move to Flopzilla once you really get into poker study and post-flop play. After this, you'll probably get into stuff like Card Runners EV and maybe even dive really deep into Poker Snowy. And there's lots of other programs out there, very detailed programs and softwares that you can use to improve your poker game. And don't do play money for practice, because nobody takes it seriously, so the only thing you can really practice there is, I don't know, really not much at all. Maybe just value extraction, wait for great hands, flop big, and then take them down the street, And if you start at the 1 cent, 2 cent, or 2 cent, 5 cent micro stakes for practice, you should be focused on just that, value extraction, versus the very fishy opponents at those levels. Don't bluff them at those levels, whether you're doing play money or those super micro stakes. Once you get to the 5 cent, 10 cent level and beyond, your opponents will start to take it more seriously, so you can start practicing more detailed skills beyond just extracting value with good hands. And something else I recommend, and it's not off the felt practice, but playing focus sessions are key as well. And I talked about focus sessions back in episode number 8. You fire up 1 to 4 tables, whatever you're comfortable with, and will allow you adequate time to think through the hands that you play, and play with intent to practice one particular strategy. So if it's hand reading, then have a focus session with just one table open, and with each hand dealt, write on a piece of paper what their range is, and practice narrowing it down street by street. You'll have to develop a shorthand way of writing things like deuce deuce plus for all pocket pairs, or jack jack plus for jacks or better. You don't have to write jack jack queen queen king king ace ace, just jack jack plus. And even ace 10 plus for all ace Broadway hands. Online play is fast, but at just one table and some practice, you'll be able to do this, to range your opponents down the streets. Even if you're not involved or the hand doesn't get to showdown, this practice will still help greatly. You'll get faster and more accurate over time. And trust me, improving your hand reading does take a ton of time. So, alrighty, thanks again for that email, Robert. Challenge! Here's my challenge to you for this episode. Build your own 3-bet ranges by position and add some semi-bluff hands in as well. Create what you would consider default 3-betting ranges by position and have a plan to expand or contract them based on the type of opponent who opened the pot. Once you create your ranges, stick to them for a week or so. At the end of the week, or even daily, review your 3-bet hands and make any necessary adjustments to your 3-bet ranges to make your 3-bets more difficult to read while keeping plenty of value built into the range. Now it's your turn to take action and do something positive for your poker game.
Now get it on!
Alright, thank you so much for listening today, and thanks again to Greg, Ingomar, and Robert for sending me those questions, and thanks to Tolkien for writing some fantastic books. If you're not already there, head over to the show notes page for everything discussed today at smartpokerstudy.com/pod48. Everything is there, and links to everything that I mentioned as well. Hit me with any feedback through the show notes, or you can send me an email to sky@smartpokerstudy.com, tweet me at smartpokerstudy, or post in the Facebook group at smartpokerstudy.com/discuss. And please send me your questions, your leaks, or ideas for podcast topics through all the channels just mentioned. Alrighty, poker people, be sure to come back next Tuesday for another leak plugging episode. Plugging the leak of betting for no reason. And make sure you join me for the $11 buy-in Big Ten tournament at 1 p.m. Sunday, April 3rd on America's Card Room for a free Last Longer prize and a bounty prize on my head. Word of mouth is the best advertising, and a recommendation from you to your friends would be most appreciated. If you enjoyed our time together and learned a little something, please share it with your Uncle Cracker. Until next time, study smart, play much, and make your next session the best one yet.
I'll be the one to